anything that's vertical, really, that's attached to both the ceiling and the floor. So the interesting thing about meditating facing the wall is that you become the wall. That presence, which is unavoidable, just comes into your body and just assists in the upright posture. So this is what we want to feel here. My hand on the wall is helping my body just sink down, but it's also helping my heart lift. So we want a heavy body endlessly sinking and relaxing, and we want a light heart that is lifting upwards endlessly. So the wall is drawing upwards and it's also drawing downwards. It's distributing your energy up and down. What enables you to slip into the internal, slip into energy, is beginner's mind. So a mind that comes to things afresh, as though for the first time. And of course, it is always the first time. If you repeat what you did yesterday, it's the first time. It's never been today before. So beginner's mind, in a sense, it's the most important thing, really, to be able to come to the work with that sense of empty enthusiasm that's just willing to be filled by the event and the activity. You can just push up slightly with the hand, and that will just add a little bit of assistance. It only needs to be 4 ounces, in fact, less than that. 4 ounces is 100 grams, so it's quite heavy. Just a couple of grams pressing down, added to your own weight. And just feel how that increases the uplift of the heart as well. So the heavier your body is, as long as you can maintain good vertical posture, the more the heart will lift. Let's try just a bit with the other hand. So I'll just wander over here. And just feel how the hand on the wall also wakens you up to the ground beneath your feet. So when the hand is on the wall, it can be on the wall very lightly, almost like you're just savoring the coolness of the stone or the brick or the plaster. You want the same sense with the feet. You're heavy and you're bearing down, but when you feel the soles of the feet, there's a sense of lightness. Bring it back to the familiar. So the new thing that's come up is just this sense of the outside edges of your feet parallel. So your little toe outside edge is directed forwards as though on tram lines, which means the big toes are coming in quite a bit. In order to check it, what we tend to do is sort of look down like this. But so what we want to do is get into the habit of just looking from behind, because this really assists the posture, and just making it into an exercise. So a sense that my hand is getting down behind me and scooping underneath my foot. When we bring the mind into the Dan Qian, similarly, we don't want it to fall down like this. So there's a sense that when you bring the mind into the Dan Qian from a standing posture, you've sort of slipped down underneath it and then risen up into the Dan Qian, rather than just dropped down into it. And this really assists that. So I'm slipping under the foot and lifting up into my belly. So we really need to get into the legs, into the ground, and then lift up into the Dan Qian. Just let the spine tilt and tip. As long as the hips don't tip too much, We want the spine to be really flexible and bendy. So you want the feeling that your hand has at least reached down as far as your knee. So you're getting into the legs. And just make sure that your outside edges remain pointing forwards. And then let's just bring it to riding horse proper. So the heels have a sense that they're trying to drift out. And that is loosening the grip that your hips have on your sacrum. Feel the two halves of the spine. The upper body from the min-meng up and then from the min-meng down. So it doesn't split the spine into two equal pieces, but there's a sense that that's where the middle is. Your sacrum, just above the sacrum is the sort of... Here my head is trying to lean backwards, but similarly my tail. So my tail and my head always point in the same direction. And then here as my head comes forwards, my tail's trying to come under. So you're looking at the spine, you're trying to make it just a very clear the string of pearls. So we don't want any tension locking like two of the pearls together. So I have to just scan it with my mind, really look at it. Where does it not really want to let the energy through? And we all have that point. And when you release it, the heart lifts. It's quite striking when I work with people, just how much the heart lifts when I release that blockage, normally in the mid-back. So the heart is always wanting to lift, and we prevent it. There's something Roberto said to me once. He said, it really saddens me to know that there are people in the world who have never experienced the sheer joy in praising God. So the lift of the heart really is just that. It's just something in you just wants to sing for joy. And our secular, overactive minds just prevent it. So as you do this phase, just try and twist the toes outwards. So you don't actually move them, but there's a sense that they're trying to. So the knees and the toes are trying to go out. And then here the heels are going out to open up the back and close the front. Now the heels have a sense of coming in, and the toes and the knees are trying to twist outwards. Like a minor version of that, a small version. So now I'm really trying to twist my heels out away from each other. And that really spreads my back. And then I twist the toes out, and that opens the front. So it's the same exercise really, but just concentrating on the feet. So this is like taking the sides of a cloak and just wrapping them around you. And then this is like opening that cloak and allowing a column of energy to come up the front. So this is rising energy. And then this is the sinking energy. So this is the attacking phase. And then this is the yielding phase. And then just allowing it to split a little bit. So one side starting and then the other side coming in. So a little bit of a wobble. And then you can just get into the sinking as well. So as you do this phase, you're going down. And then as you do the other phase, you're coming up. So here slipping down, and then here bringing something up. Just check the feet, but always check from behind. You're going from the heel down the outside edge to the little toe and then through to the big toe. So let's just try that figure of 8, tracing a figure of 8. So just remain looking down. You're trying to, like the end of your spine is like a pencil, and you're trying to trace a smooth, continuous figure of 8 on the ground. So once you've got it, just bring the gaze upwards. So don't let yourself look down at it too long. So this is an exercise really for just keeping my small mind, my rational mind, occupied on something useful, rather than letting it wander around and think to itself. I'm just trying to keep it on this simple task, because only then will the energy open up. So as well as our body having the shape of riding horse, so does the mind. The small mind is contained, and all around it, the big energy mind is swirling and billowing. And the more I can just constrain my small mind, the more the energy is allowed to move and open out. So the small mind is me, my sense of self, my sense of ego. It tends to be with my weight. So where I think I am, that's where this small mind will gather. And the energy mind tends to be in the other part, so the empty part, the part that you're turning away from. So now let's just feel that. So just this, we're still tracing a figure of 8, but now we're using the energy mind. So as I turn this side, I allow this hand, the emptying side, to reach out. And then I draw myself round. This is just ward off. It's just how you make ward off. So the arm comes out almost in my blind side. I can barely see it. I just get a sense of movement. And then I want to come round so softly, so gently, so respectfully that the energy stays out. It doesn't just suck back in and then come out the other side. And I roll into it like rolling up a carpet. I've rolled into my own energy. And then energy comes out of this side, and then I draw myself around again. I'm tracing a figure of 8 again, but it's a bigger figure of 8, if you like, and it's on the other side. So like a tentacle of energy is coming out of the mid-back and down in the direction of this arm. I'm sending my arm out to direct this tentacle of energy. And then it's like the tentacle just grabs something and just hauls me around. And the same thing in the leg. There's a tentacle of energy there. That's easier to feel really because the foot is on the ground. So something comes out here down to the ground and then catches the ground and draws me round. And my small mind is just remaining quiet, trying to just stay out of the picture as long as possible. And then as it's coming around, it's trying its best not to look, because it knows that if it sees, it will then try and control, and then it will ruin everything. And then just keep this going, but start the small mind just tracing the figure of 8 like it was doing before. So my big mind is sending the energy out here, but my small mind is coming around this foot. So they're both operating. And what we would like is the sense that the energy mind is leading. So this is my big mind here. And then it's still big mind, but then there's a point where it becomes more dominated by the small mind. And that's when you switch to the other side. And then just bring your attention to the action of the foot on the ground. So as I extend my energy out this side, this foot, the foot that's emptying, is straightening in order to empty, but it's also twisting on the ground. I'm really trying to twist the toes out. It feels, when you get it, that the leg has become completely straight, but quite twisted up. So the muscles are quite tight on the leg because there's a sense that they're wound up. And then from that, you then start twisting the foot the other way, like you're trying to pull the toes in even more. And it's that rolls you back. And then here, I'm twisting this foot out this way. And then I roll the toes in and draw myself around. So there's a sense that the movement is coming from the empty foot, and the support is coming from the full foot. So now this leg is just supporting me, and this leg can then be responsible for moving me. And it's not just straightening and bending the leg, it's twisting the foot to get this turn in the waist. So you really have to see it as a tentacle, as something that's really extended out of you and into the ground, and then you catch it. So it's not just an imagination, it's an imagination becoming reality. You see this tentacle with such clarity and fierceness, it actually becomes real. So you twist it so much this way that it's got no choice but to spring back. So this is yin becoming yang, or the other way around. So how does one bounce back into the other? You just take it to a real extreme, and then it's got nowhere else to go. It's got to spring back. I don't know why, but when I say to someone whom I'm in the company of, put your feet outside edges forward, they'll always end up like this. So you've really got to look down at it and just line your outside edges up with the floorboards or the tiles. So let's just try just a little bit of this again, because this gives that lovely sense of leaning back, which is so important in riding horse. It's like I'm uprooting myself. I'm trying to get under my own Dan Chen. I'm trying to get into the legs. So rather than being perched on top of the legs, there's a real sense that I'm in them and that I then come up into the Dan Chen. So if you're leaning to the left like this, what I want to make sure is that my tail is also leaning to the left. My tail is pointing down into this leg. So I'm not tilting the spine, I'm bending it. And there's a real sense that I'm bending it in its middle, in the sort of Danqian Min Meng region. And then just back to riding horse a sec. Feel the heels pulling apart, helping the sacrum loosen and just sink down in the container that the hips are producing for it. So if we had the toes out, it would just clamp too much, and you'd have too much sort of mind control over your sacrum. Here we want everything to be so loose that the energy can move it. You think how delicate and subtle energy is. So we want to be responsive to energy. So it really is just getting yourself in this really delicate, sensitive balance. And then you can become responsive. And now let's just try the knocking the gates of life. So the first warm-up exercise. So I turn to the side and I extend my arms out. And then I turn back to the front and that brings the hands in, striking the Min Meng and the Danqian. And out and in. So the hands come in and strike as you turn back to the front, and they go out as you turn to the side. Effectively, we're going from bow and arrow posture to riding horse. So bow and arrow posture is like high energy. I'm really wound up. I've really compressed the spring. And then this is low energy. So it always wants to return back to the front. how we would normally do it, but with a flavor of that. If I'm going to turn in this direction, basically what's happening is I'm pressing this hip. What we want to get away from is a sense of turning by just having this central thing called a waist that I just do this from. I want to feel how the 2 feet are operating, how they're interacting with each other to produce this turn. Otherwise, the energy never comes up into the upper body. You get like a whip type energy from turning. What we want to do is bring energy up from the ground and into the opposite arm. So for that, you really have to separate the 2 legs and feel them, really be aware of them. The way we would normally turn, I would straighten this leg. So if I straighten this leg, it pushes this left hip round. We do that, but as we do it, we want to feel this leg also pushing in order to get this hip to go backwards. So this hip is being pushed forwards, this hip is being pushed backwards, and that produces this turn. You never really get into the leg 100%. Because this is real front foot. This is like a really front foot posture. So it's not this. And so front foot posture is only ever 70% at the most in the front leg. So as I'm pushing this hip round by straightening this leg is also trying to straighten, to push this hip back, but also to drive its strength up through my body and into the opposite arm. And then when I turn this side, this leg is pushing me round, but this leg has to work as well. So this is trying to push me into this leg, and this leg is, if anything, is trying to keep me out of it, or just trying to maintain a better balance than it would be if I just did this. If I just come into the foot like this, it all just becomes heavy. It's like something has settled and there's no energy in the upper body. This is really important, but it's also very difficult because you very much need a sense that the 2 legs can really play against each other. So I'm pushing this hip by straightening this leg and twisting this foot out. And then this leg is straightening. It's also trying to twist out because it's trying to push this back and it's trying to extend something up into my upper body. And then I just spring back. I just release that and I will just spring back to the front. And now this leg's straightening to push this forwards, but this leg similarly straightening to drive this hip back and to squeeze its energy up into my left side. So it just becomes, you know, like this exercise, but just from riding horse. So I'm yielding here. So just feeling the front foot, not simply as a place where my weight is that's just holding me, but as something that's really trying to drive movement through the body. Yeah, so it's very difficult because you really do need to have two separate minds operating each leg. You can't have just a mind that's congealed into one. Really listening to each other to maintain this semblance of balance and equilibrium, which is really precarious and wobbly. So when you're in equilibrium, if someone looks at you, the person has a sense of energy, a feeling for energy, they should get a real sense that you're trembling. You're energized. So this is just all in the form all the way through. So when you come into the front foot, your front foot is trying to keep you back. And you'll find that you have to work like this because otherwise you never get the hips square at the end of a front foot posture. So if I want to get my hips facing this corner, it's not enough just to pull myself around because this will always be trailing. It will always be wanting to pull backwards. So I really have to straighten this leg to drive this hip forwards. And then to stop myself just doing this, which means half of my body is effectively dead, just supporting, I have to really push here as well. So there's a sense that the energy in the opposite hand is coming from the other leg, from this front leg. It's coming up here and around. But this hand is being placed by this hip, which is operated by this leg. So the energy is from the opposite leg, but the placement is from the same leg. So they're both very important, but they have very different functions. We just need them to be sufficiently different for us to be able to keep them separate, so they don't just congeal into a oneness. Okay, now let's just try a little bit more on the wall, but now just leaning on it. Now you can lean, you barely need to lean. You can be really quite close and just have your hands on. So the further your feet are from the wall, the more weight you'll effectively be putting onto the wall. And we just lean. Now what we want is the feeling, again with these outside edges, parallel, so the big toes coming in. And we just want a feeling of the plum on the end of the plumb line, so the piece of lead. The sacrum is heavy and is hanging down and is tending to bring my belly forwards. So as I lean on the wall, there's a sense that my weight is actually driving my hands up the wall rather than down. So I'm using the wall with my arms to help push myself into the legs. So my legs are trying to push me into the wall, but my arms on the wall are trying to push me down the legs and into the ground. So there's a little bit of a struggle going on, which we have to keep really elastic and playful. So you can just turn the waist from side to side. You can get a figure of 8 going around the hips a little bit. You can even pace, you can even step like you're trying to walk through the wall. And you can bring the heels off the ground if it makes it easier. And then when the arms get tired, which they will quite quickly, just bring the forearms onto the wall. And remember, you're using the wall to push yourself down the legs, to get through the legs and into the ground. And then just bring yourself up and just lean with your back against it. Get the sacrum in contact with the wall. So your upper back is slightly away. Outside edges parallel again. Just work it like you're rocking the sacrum against the wall and massaging the sacrum with the wall. Gradually, slowly, just slipping down a little bit. And then you can figure of 8 around the sacrum, around the feet. And then just into riding horse, but with the back against the wall. Feel the wall just trying to suck you down into its base, but also draw you up towards its top. So I'm in like a 4-story building here, so it's strong here. Trees are great. So we want to use the wall and use the ground. The ground is something you're always trying to get into, not something that you're moving around on top of. So we have 2 relationships with the ground. One in order to move the body around, and the other one to exchange energy, to get my energy into the ground and to get energy from the ground coming up into me. Let's just sit. Just with the legs as spread as they can be, and just with the hands on the ground. Feel how nourishing and relaxing and emptying of the mind this feels. Proximity to the ground is really, really important. I just cannot understand why people sleep in beds. that are raised from the ground, why they eat their meals sitting on chairs raised from the ground. And then just bring one hand between the legs and the other hand behind. And just feel how different they feel. Feel how much happier the Dantian is when it's this close to the ground. So there's something in your Dantian that is always trying to get into the ground. And there's something in the ground that's always calling your Dantian, calling your center of gravity. And then just swap the hands round. Feel the contact as a place of real exchange rather than simply a hard surface that you're resting your hand on. So something is really surging down my arm and into the ground, and that's allowing something from the ground to come up into me, up my arm, across the shoulder and into the heart. So when you work with the arms, you're feeding the heart, and when you work with the legs, you're feeding the Dantian. Your arms are trying to extend into the ground. They're working. So I'm pushing the ground, not in order to push myself away from it, but in order to open it up and let me in and let it into me. It's the same with the feet. I'm pushing the ground with my feet all the time in Tai Chi, but not to push the body up, to push it into a turn, but also to get through the skin, get through the surface of the ground and into its depths. So it's interesting when I work with people, because generally I'll get them into this position. And it is revealing how this is when it really starts to work, when they really get out of their head and the energy starts manifesting. They don't feel anything happening, of course. And let's bring it back up. So just riding horse one more time. And let's just try just a little bit of this, just making sure. If anything, the heels should be too far out rather than the toes being too far out. So all the time, these turns are operated by my two legs. This leg is pressing me around, but this leg is pressing me around here. Just don't let the mind set. Maintain this duality, the two legs constantly playing. Stop activity and return to stillness, and that stillness will be even more active. It's a real sense with this. I'm quietening down, but my stillness is very much an equilibrium. It's a balance of movements. And then just bringing it up into attention, but again, with the outside edges parallel, so the toes in. Feel how that spread across the sacrum is still here, even though the feet are close together. It's much easier to maintain this feeling of the sacrum dropping down through my lower body.